Well, recently we saw an earthquake down in Southern California, also one up here in our area.
Right, so I picked this week's question in relation to the earthquakes that we had, kind of accordingly, considering the past few months. This question is, why don't we get earthquakes like the other states? Alexis has asked this from Hillside Elementary. She asked it quite a while ago, so I think now we know that we can have earthquakes here in Oregon. In fact, the entire Pacific Northwest can have earthquakes. You are looking at the West Coast and the two major faults that run along the west coast of North America. This is an active continental margin. That's what it's called. On the East Coast, it is passive, meaning it's not very active, and that's why the East Coast does not see a lot of earthquakes. The two major faults are, one, the San Andreas Fault. This is from mainly the Bay Area and south, so any earthquakes in California, or at least most of them, are associated with this fault. And for us, here in Oregon, also Northern California up to Vancouver Island, any earthquake that we would have would be associated with the Cascadia subduction zone. It is also called the Cascadia Fault. Although that Eureka earthquake was not in association with this fault, there are small plate boundaries along these faults that can also cause earthquakes, and that was the case for that Eureka earthquake that we had. These are the three different types of fault movements. Basically, the reason why we have earthquakes is because we have these plates underneath the ground that are hitting one another. They're either sliding parallel, or they're compressing against one another, they're moving away from one another, and what happens is they start to deform, and if they break free from one another, it causes an earthquake. It causes the ground to shake. It's kind of like picturing a meter stick, bending it in half so both ends are approaching one another. When it snaps, we have an earthquake. This is that subduction zone. It separates two different plates, the North American plate and the Juan de Fuca plate. And basically, if this were to, in a sense, move underneath the North American plate, we would have a very large earthquake, and we are overdue for one. Both of these faults are overdue for one. The problem is earthquakes are very difficult to predict, so we don't know exactly when that is going to happen. But definitely a topic of discussion right now, considering the recent earthquakes. If you have a question, head to our website. I'd love to answer it, and I'll have your full forecast after the break.